Daytime serial dramas are commonly known as soap operas, but have you ever wondered where they got their name? Stay tuned to find out the surprising origin story of the humble soap opera. Facts First presents why they're called soap operas. Interesting facts to know. What's in a name? The origin of the modern soap opera can trace its roots back to short daytime serial dramas that used to air on radio in the 30s. Radio execs were searching for a way to increase their station's ad revenue, so they started to court businesses that peddled in household products, seeing as how most people at home during the middle of the day were female homemakers. Women were already the primary advertising targets of multinational consumer goods company Procter & Gamble, so it made sense that they were the first advertiser to sponsor one of these daytime radio dramas. The first generation of soaps were promoted alongside P&G's laundry detergent powder, Oxidol. It didn't take long for other soap, cosmetics, and household goods manufacturers to see how successful P&G's campaign was and want to get in on the action. P&G even began to produce their own radio dramas, and before long, these dramas began to be closely associated, if not synonymous, with their advertisers, hence the origin of the name soap opera. The world's first genuine soap opera was created by legendary actress Irna Phillips in 1930. Her creation was called Painted Dreams and aired on WGN in Chicago. It aired daily and had 15 minutes of runtime. Its plot involved a family that included a recently widowed woman and her unmarried daughter. Phillips later created the first TV soap in 1949 called These Are My Children, not to be confused with the different soap All My Children, which premiered in 1970s. As time went on, Phillips created several other iconic soaps, including As the World Turns, Guiding Light, and Another World. The term soap opera was first used to describe these kinds of shows in 1939. The first mentions of it appeared in print in 1940, when both the New York Times and LA Times began using the phrase. Even after making the leap to television, soap manufacturers continued to sponsor the shows as they maintained their popularity. If anything, the transition to TV made them all the more so popular. All That Remains. On September 9th, 2022, the long-running soap opera Days of Our Lives aired its 14,418th episode, thus ending its run on NBC. While the show hasn't been canceled, it was moved off the air and onto NBC's paid streaming service Peacock. The only soaps remaining on the airwaves as of 2023 are The Bold and the Beautiful, General Hospital, and The Young and the Restless. While the modern soap seems to be just barely holding on and is arguably in danger of going extinct, back in the day the format was extremely popular. In 1986, over 30 million people tuned in to watch the Christmas Day installment of the British soap opera EastEnders on BBC. Likewise, in the 70s and 80s, American soaps like General Hospital, One Life to Live, and The Young and the Restless were averaging Nielsen ratings in the 8 to 11 range, and anything above an 8 is generally considered a major hit. These days, daytime dramas just don't seem to grip broadcast TV execs or home viewers like they used to. In 2010, there were still 7 soaps on broadcast TV, and at the beginning of the millennium, there were 10. If you go back another 10 years, soap fans of the early 90s had dozens of options to choose from. Past soaps that used to captivate audiences who were ever curious to see how their plot lines unfolded included Generations, Passions, Another World, Sunset Beach, and Santa Barbara, all on NBC. On ABC, there was Loving, The City, Port Charles, and One Life to Live, while CBS had As the World Turns and Guiding Light. So what happened? How did all the soaps lose their suds? According to Miami University's sociology professor C. Lee Harrington, the beginning of the end for the soap opera was likely in 1995 when coverage of the O.J. Simpson trial interrupted regular soap airings. From there on out, unscripted TV shows rose in popularity, with offerings like The Jerry Springer Show, Judge Judy, and Maury dominating the ratings. Viewers have since developed much shorter attention spans, especially with the rise of things like TikTok and YouTube. Since soaps require viewers to tune in day after day to keep up with their ever-developing and intersecting storylines, it only makes sense that such offerings would lose their appeal in the modern age of instant gratification. On top of that, the world has changed a lot in the last few decades. For example, there are far fewer stay-at-home parents for advertisers to target in 2023. Not surprisingly, Procter & Gamble transitioned away from producing soap operas to advertising online on social media platforms by 2010. Even so, many people are still peeved that Days of Our Lives is being moved to a pay-to-watch streaming service. The show's primary demographic is seniors, and some of its fans have been watching literally for decades at this point. So to all of a sudden require them to shell out $5 a month to watch their favorite show is seen by some as pretty predatory. But then again, maybe those who were used to listening to their favorite stories every day on the radio had similar complaints when soaps made the jump to television. At the end of the day, producers, executives, and networks are going to go where the money does. And since soap operas seem to be consistently losing viewers, it's not altogether unsurprising. After All My Children and One Life to Live were canceled, U.S. media outlets began labeling the event as the Soapocalypse. Now that we only have 3 soaps left to watch, it brings up the question, is there a way to reinvigorate the seemingly dying genre? The battle for new viewers. One of the daytime soaps' biggest problems in recent years has been a failure to bring new fans to the genre while retaining the ones they still have left. Much of the culture today seems to be laser-focused on all things nostalgic, from the endless stream of remakes and reboots to all-star reality series which bring past favorite contestants back onto our screens. Soaps are no exception to this ongoing trend. One of the most tried and true moves to give the ratings a boost is to bring back an iconic character from yesteryear. The problem with this tactic, however, is it does very little to attract younger viewers or practically anyone who isn't already familiar with them. Soaps seem to be experiencing a significant issue with drawing in a younger audience. The primary viewers are elderly who want to tune in every day to keep up with their stories. In the UK, it's estimated for the 16 to 34 demographic, audiences who watch both Coronation Street and EastEnders, Britain's top soaps, have more than halved in the last 5 years. And at least in the case of EastEnders, viewership fell from 1.3 million people in 2017 to 447,000 last year. Here in the US, we're seeing the same exact trend unfold. General Hospital has likewise lost more than half of its viewers in the last decade, especially in that 16 to 34 age bracket. The problem remains. Without a new generation of viewers watching, it's hard to see a future where soap operas continue to survive for very long. And unless our viewing habits change, there really is no hope for the future of soap operas. Maybe if they can change formats and adapt to the modern tech age, they might be able to evolve into something else, but as it stands, we're looking at a genre of television that's lying in its deathbed. Now it's time to hear from you. Do you think the soap opera is on the brink of extinction, or do you think it can reinvent itself in a way that connects with younger viewers? Let us know in the comments section below.